It was one of those October nights when the wind sounded like it was scraping the roof. I couldn't sleep, so I got up to grab a glass of water. The house was quiet, too quiet. I could still smell the varnish from the table I'd built 20 years ago. Every board, every nail in that place had my fingerprints on it. As I walked down the hall, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. At first, I thought maybe Daniel couldn't sleep either, but then I heard her voice, Megan's, low and sharp like the edge of a saw. "Once he signs the last paper," she whispered, "we'll move him to the care home. The old man won't even notice." The sound of my own son's name, Daniel, was followed by silence. I waited for him to defend me, to say something, anything, but he just nodded. My hand tightened around the glass. It slipped, shattered. The noise echoed through the hallway. For a second, no one moved. Then I heard Megan's footsteps, quick and nervous. I stepped back into the shadows. "He probably forgot what he was doing again," she muttered. "Don't worry, it'll be over soon." Over soon, the words rang in my head. I felt my heart pounding like a hammer against my ribs. That house, I built it after Mary passed. Every brick, every plank, every corner made for Daniel. And now they were planning to throw me out of it like an old piece of furniture. I didn't say a word. I just turned, grabbed my coat from the hook and stepped outside. The cold hit me straight in the face. The street was empty, the porch light flickered. Behind me, the home I built stood still, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I started walking. Didn't know where I was going, didn't care. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from something deeper. The kind of hurt that doesn't make noise. The kind that just sits inside you, heavy and alive. I walked until the house was nothing but a shadow behind me. That's when I heard a voice from across the street. "Mr. Mason." I froze. A man stepped out from under a streetlight. He looked familiar, short, neat, a little nervous. "It's Eric. I used to work for Daniel," he said, "the accountant." I didn't answer, just stared at him, waiting. He took a breath, looked me in the eye. "Sir, I know what they're planning, and I can prove it." For a moment, the night felt heavier than ever. My breath came out white in the air. I didn't know whether to hit him, thank him, or just collapse right there on the sidewalk. Eric reached into his coat and held up a small flash drive. The streetlight glinted off the metal. "Everything's on here," he said quietly. "Emails, documents, signatures. They've been trying to take everything you built." I stared at the flash drive, then at him. The world around me was silent, no wind, no cars, no sound at all, just my pulse, loud and uneven. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. "Because I couldn't keep quiet anymore," he said. "They fired me last week when I refused to fake your signature." He looked down, almost ashamed. "You don't deserve what they're doing, sir." I wanted to speak, but the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded, slow and heavy. For 68 years, I thought betrayal was something that happened to other men. But that night, standing under the streetlight with a stranger holding my son's secrets in his hand, I realized betrayal has a face. And sometimes, it looks like your own child. Eric handed me the flash drive. His hand was shaking too. "You need to see this," he said. I took it. My fingers brushed against the cold metal. It felt like the weight of everything I'd ever worked for compressed into a single piece of plastic. The old man in me wanted to go back home, crawl into bed, pretend none of it was real. But the father in me, he knew it was time to face the truth. I looked up at Eric and said quietly, "If you're lying to me, son, I'll know." He met my eyes. "I'm not." And for the first time that night, I believed someone. That was the moment everything changed. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man who'd just been robbed of his name, his dignity, his peace, and I was going to take them back. You know, life has a cruel way of testing what we're made of. Sometimes it's not the storms that break you, it's the silence after. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you raised, someone you trusted, you'll understand what that night felt like. And if you're still here listening, maybe you'll stick around because this story is just beginning. Eric looked nervous, the kind of nervous that comes from knowing too much and saying it too late. We were sitting inside an old diner off the highway, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and bacon grease. The neon light outside flickered through the window, cutting his face in half between guilt and fear. He stirred his coffee, not drinking it. "Mister," Mason, he started, I need to tell you something I should have said months ago. I didn't answer, just watched the steam rise from his cup. He took a deep breath. Megan came to me first. She said you were getting forgetful, that Daniel needed to manage things for you. She asked me to prepare a few documents, power of attorney, estate transfer, the usual kind of thing. He paused, his voice dropping. But it wasn't usual, sir, not at all. I frowned. Go on. They were transferring everything to Daniel and her. The house, the savings, even the trust account your wife left behind. Everything under your name was being reassigned. For a second I didn't understand. Reassigned. He nodded. Legally speaking, stolen. The words hit me harder than I expected. I sat back, the leather booth creaking. I thought of the nights I stayed up sanding the floors, the summers Mary and I spent painting the porch, the laughter Daniel used to fill this world with. They told me, Eric continued, that you'd already agreed, that you just couldn't handle the paperwork anymore. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. They said that. He looked down. Yes, sir, and they wanted me to fake your signature. Megan said she'd take care of me for it. I didn't do it. I told them it was wrong. But Daniel, he stopped, rubbed his hands together. He just stood there, didn't defend you, didn't stop her. He said, just get it done. My jaw tightened. That was my boy, my only boy. I whispered, you were their accountant. Why come to me now? His eyes lifted and I could see something break in him. Because they fired me, said I was uncooperative, and I realized I wasn't protecting them anymore. I was protecting myself from the guilt of knowing what they were doing. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small USB drive and placed it on the table between us. It gleamed under the diner light like it weighed 100 pounds. Everything's here, he said. Emails, bank transfers, draft contracts. I saved them because I knew one day they'd cross a line, and now they have. I didn't touch it, just stared at the tiny piece of metal sitting there, holding the proof of how far my own family had fallen. Eric went on, his voice quieter now. The house alone is worth over $3 million. But that's not all. There's something else you should know. He leaned forward, lowering his voice even more. Your wife, she left you something, a policy. A hidden investment under her name transferred to you after her death. I don't think she ever told Daniel or Megan. It's tied to a trust account in a small credit union, old-fashioned but safe. I felt something shift inside me, like a door opening in a dark hallway. Mary, I asked softly. He nodded. She planned for this. She didn't trust Megan. She said it herself in one of her notes to the bank, that everything she had was meant for you in case the family turned cold. For a long moment I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. Mary always thought 3 steps ahead. Even when cancer was eating her away, she still managed to think about what would happen after she was gone. She always believed in you, Eric said, trying to fill the silence. She said you were the kind of man who'd never let money change who he was. I smiled weakly. Guess she didn't know how good our son's wife was at it. He looked away, ashamed, and whispered, I'm sorry, Mr. Mason. I was part of it. I saw the first drafts. I should have warned you earlier. I leaned forward. Then why are you here now? He looked me dead in the eye. Because I couldn't sleep anymore. I kept seeing her signature, your name, those papers. I realized if I didn't make this right, I'd be no better than them. Silence settled between us again. The waitress refilled our coffees without a word. The clink of the pot against the cup sounded like a hammer on steel. I picked up the USB, turned it in my hand. So what now? Eric hesitated. That's up to you, but if you run, they'll win. They'll paint you as unstable, and by the time the court catches up, everything you built will be gone. If you fight, well, you might actually win. You just have to be smart about it. I stared out the window. The rain had started again, tapping on the glass like fingers on a coffin lid. Mary used to tell me, don't fight anger with anger, Harold. Build something better out of it. Maybe she was still right. Maybe this was what she meant, not a house, not a company, but a lesson. Eric's voice cut through my thoughts. Mr. Mason, I can help you. I know the paperwork, I know the law, and I know how they think. I nodded slowly, still holding the flash drive. You said something earlier about the trust, the hidden account. How much is in there? He shrugged. A little over $500,000. Not much compared to what they tried to take, but enough to start over or to fight back. Start over or fight back. The words rolled in my head. I thought about leaving town, disappearing somewhere no one could find me. But then I pictured Megan's smirk, Daniel's silence, and the walls of my home, the ones I built with my own hands, and I knew I wasn't done. I slipped the USB into my coat pocket. You said, if I run, I lose. If I return. He met my eyes. You can win. I stood up. Then I'm going home. Eric looked surprised. Tonight? Yeah, I said, tossing a few bills on the table. If I'm gonna fight, I'm not doing it from a motel. He half smiled, half worried. You sure you're ready for that? I grabbed my hat. I built that house from nothing. I can damn well take it back the same way. As I walked out of the diner, the rain soaked through my jacket, but I didn't care. My wife's words echoed in my head like a heartbeat. If they ever forget where they came from, remind them with quiet dignity. For the first time in years, I didn't feel old. I felt awake, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. Eric leaned back in the booth, his face lit by the flickering diner light. Mr. Mason, he said, his voice steady now, you can't disappear. That's what they want. Go back home. Pretend to be weak, confused, whatever they expect you to be. Record everything. I'll take care of the legal side. I just looked at him, trying to decide if he was crazy or if I was. Pretend to be weak. I'd spent my whole life trying to be strong for everyone else. Now he wanted me to play the fool. Still, something about the way he said it, the calm certainty, made me believe him. Maybe because, for the first time, someone wasn't treating me like I was finished. By the time I got back, it was almost 3 in the morning. The rain had stopped, but the driveway glistened under the porch light. My own house looked unfamiliar, like it was watching me. I unlocked the door quietly, stepped inside. The floor creaked like it always had, but even that sound felt different now, less like home, more like warning. Everything was in its place, yet everything felt wrong. The smell of Megan's perfume lingered in the hallway. The family pictures on the wall, our wedding day, Daniel's graduation, suddenly looked like museum pieces of a life I no longer belonged to. I walked past the kitchen. The broken glass I'd dropped earlier had been cleaned up. No trace of what I'd heard remained. Just a spotless floor and a spotless lie. In the living room, I saw the photograph of Mary sitting on the mantel. Her smile, the one that used to pull me out of every storm, looked different tonight. I reached out and touched the edge of the frame. The wood was smooth, warm from the lamp beside it. If they ever forget where they came from, she used to say, remind them with quiet dignity. Quiet dignity. I whispered those words like a prayer. I sat down in her old chair. The house was still, like it was holding its breath. That's when I slipped on the wristwatch Eric had given me, a simple, old-fashioned thing with a microphone built inside. Record everything, he'd said. I didn't sleep that night. I just listened. Every sound, every step upstairs, every soft laugh behind closed doors, it all meant something now. When the sun came up, Megan came down first, hair done, coffee mug in hand. She looked at me like a piece of furniture. Morning, she said, not waiting for a reply. Then glancing at the stack of mail, you still haven't signed that property transfer, Harold. Daniel said you'd get to it yesterday. I blinked slowly, feigning confusion. Transfer. She sighed, the kind of sigh people use when they think you're stupid. The one about the maintenance and utilities. Don't worry about it, I'll help you later. I nodded, pretending to forget. The watch on my wrist caught a faint glint of morning light. Later, Daniel came down, tie crooked, eyes tired. He didn't meet my gaze when he passed me. Just said, you okay, Dad? The way a man asks out of obligation, not concern. Fine, I said softly. I'm fine. He nodded, distracted, already checking his phone. Good, Megan'll handle the bills. You just take it easy, all right. I smiled faintly. Taking it easy is all I do these days. He left for work, and Megan followed soon after. The house fell into silence again, and for the first time in weeks I was grateful for it. I stood there in the kitchen, feeling the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the walls. Then I reached under the dining table and stuck another recording device, a tiny one Eric had given me, beneath the frame. One in the living room, one in the kitchen, one on me. That should do it. As I moved around, my mind went back to what Mary used to say whenever life got too loud. The truth doesn't shout, Harold. It waits for silence. That became my strategy. I wouldn't confront, I wouldn't accuse, I would listen. The first recording that day caught Megan on the phone. Yes, the lawyer's ready, we just need the final signature. He's slipping fast, barely remembers what day it is. She laughed, light and cruel. Honestly, it's getting easier. Hearing that voice, so casual in its cruelty, sent something sharp through my chest, but I stayed still. That's what men like me do. We don't explode, we endure. In the following days, I kept up the act. When Daniel asked me about finances, I'd say, "Your mother used to handle that." When Megan mentioned the will, I'd look confused and ask, "What will?" They thought they were winning. They had no idea they were performing for an audience of one. Every night I sat in the dark, replaying snippets of what I'd caught. Megan talking about the transfer, Daniel agreeing to let her handle it. Each sentence was another nail in the coffin of their plan. But between the recordings, there were quiet moments too, moments that hurt more than the betrayal. The smell of Mary's old perfume in the hallway, the photo of Daniel as a boy, holding the first birdhouse we built together, the echo of her laughter when we used to dance in this very kitchen. I realized I wasn't just recording lies, I was recording ghosts. There was one night when I caught my reflection in the window and almost didn't recognize myself. The stoop of my shoulders, the gray in my beard, the tired eyes. But there was something else there too. Something steadier. Resolve. Eric was right. If I ran, I'd lose. If I stayed quiet, patient, deliberate, if I let them believe they'd already won, then I could take everything back. The next morning, I placed a fresh battery in the watch, made myself a cup of black coffee and sat at the table. When Megan walked in, she smiled that fake sweet smile of hers. "Morning, Harold. Feeling okay today?" I looked up at her, my voice calm. "Better than you think." She blinked a little thrown but said nothing, just walked away. And as the door closed behind her, I whispered under my breath, "Game on." I woke up before sunrise that morning, couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet again, the kind of quiet that hums, the kind that reminds you you're the only one left awake in a place that used to be full of laughter. I made a pot of coffee, black, the way Mary used to drink it. Poured one cup for me, and out of habit poured one for her. I caught myself halfway and smiled, soft, tired, a little foolish. 40 years and I still set 2 cups. I sat at the table, tracing my fingers over the wood grain. That table was our first project together. We were just kids then, broke and full of dreams. She sanded while I nailed. We argued about whether to stain it dark or light. She won, of course. She always did. Back then, this house wasn't much, just a patch of land and a vision. We built it one wall, one breath, one promise at a time. I can still hear her laugh echoing across the yard, calling out, "Careful, Harold, you're cutting that board crooked again." And I'd laugh back, "It's not crooked, it's artistic." Those were the days when life smelled like sawdust and sunshine. The walls still hold that memory, the way she'd hum while painting them, how we danced barefoot on the porch when the floorboards were still wet. We planted those maple trees out front together. I told her they'd grow faster than us. She said, "Good. Then when we're old, they'll give us shade." We got old, but not old enough. I walked through the hallway now, running my hand along the wall she painted autumn wheat. She loved that color, said it felt like home. But now, with Megan's white and gold decor, it just feels cold. There's nothing of her left here, or at least that's what I thought. Later that day, while Megan was out shopping, I decided to go into the storage room, the one she calls the extra space. It used to be Mary's little garden corner. She kept her seeds there, her tools, her tiny notebook full of messy sketches for the next season's flowers. I hadn't been inside since Mary died. The door creaked. The smell of dust hit me first, sharp, dry, lifeless. I turned on the light. There were boxes everywhere. New things, Megan's things. And in the corner, there it was. A small urn covered in a plastic grocery bag shoved between a vacuum cleaner and an old suitcase. Mary's ashes. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. For a moment I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe it was something else. But then I saw it, the little brass plaque I'd engraved myself. Mary Ann Mason, beloved wife, 1954-2015. They moved her. I knelt down, slow, Like my knees couldn't hold me anymore. My hands shook as I peeled the bag away. The dust clung to my skin. The air felt heavier than concrete. There was a note taped to the box. Megan's handwriting. Move to storage for staging. Will return after open house. Staging. My wife's resting place staged like a piece of furniture. I didn't cry, not right away. It was like my body didn't remember how. I just sat there on the cold floor, the hum of the light buzzing above me, holding that urn like it was the last warm thing in the world. After a while, I whispered, "They moved you once, love, but they won't move me." The words came out steady, but my throat burned. I stayed there for a long time, just sitting beside her, talking like I used to, telling her how the maples had turned red again this year, how the porch still creaks in the same spot, how Daniel still doesn't know how to fix a leaky faucet. And somewhere in that silence, I swear I felt her like a hand on my shoulder, gentle and firm, the way she always grounded me when the world got too loud. I remembered her last day, how she smiled, weak but stubborn. "Don't let this house forget who we were," she told me. "Promise me that." I promised, but somewhere between the years, the bills, and the loneliness, I let other people decide what this place should be. And in doing so, I forgot what it was. This house wasn't about walls or money. It was our story. Every beam, every floorboard, every nail, it was built with love. And they wanted to sell it like a product. That night, I brought the urn back into the living room. I cleaned it gently, polished the brass until it shone. Then I placed it right back where it belonged, on the mantel above the fireplace under the photo of our wedding day. When Megan came home, she saw it. Her face tightened. "Oh, Harold, I told you." I looked her straight in the eye, calm, quiet. "She stays here," I said. "She built this house more than anyone." She didn't argue, just turned and walked away. After she left, I sat down, the firelight flickering on the brass. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. I realized something then. They could take the papers, the money, even the title, but they could never take the story. Mary once said love was like wood. You can sand it, stain it, even burn it, but the grain always shows through. And she was right. That night I whispered to her ashes, "I'm sorry it took me this long to remember, but I'm back now, and I'm not leaving again." Then I leaned back, listening to the crackle of the fire, the house breathing with me again. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel empty. It felt like home. It started with little things. I'd ask what day it was, even when I already knew. I'd forget where I put the mail or mix up names from old stories. Megan loved it. She thought she was watching me fall apart. One morning, I was sitting at the table, staring at the newspaper, pretending to squint at the headlines. Megan came in, her phone in one hand, coffee in the other. She smiled, that fake kind of smile people save for funerals. "Morning, Harold, you okay?" I blinked a few times, gave her a slow nod. "I think it's Thursday, right?" She chuckled, soft but sharp. "It's Monday." Then she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Poor thing." A few minutes later, I heard her in the kitchen on the phone with Daniel. "He's fading fast," she said. "Soon the house is ours." I stirred my coffee and stared at the reflection in the spoon. The watch on my wrist blinked once, recording. Every word, every smug whisper caught in crystal clarity. When she left the room, I pulled a small camera from my pocket, another one Eric had given me, and placed it behind the clock on the mantel. The angle caught everything, the living room, the paperwork, even the way Megan smiled when she thought no one was watching. Later that afternoon, Eric dropped by with Patricia Harlan, the attorney. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed, with a calm that could cut through any storm. "Mr. Mason," she said, "we'll need at least 2 weeks of recordings to make this airtight. You're doing good, just keep playing the part." I grinned a little. "You mean keep acting like an old fool?" She smirked. "Exactly." When they left, I stood by the window, watching them drive off, and caught my reflection again. Old fool, that's what they thought I was. But fools don't build houses that stand 40 years. Fools don't raise families or survive heartbreak. I wasn't losing my mind, I was just taking back control of it. That night, Megan brought me a stack of papers, her voice syrupy sweet. "It's just some maintenance stuff, Harold, insurance, utilities, that sort of thing." I smiled faintly. "You always take such good care of things, Megan. What would I do without you?" She laughed, patting my shoulder like I was a child. Let's not find out. She pointed to a line near the bottom. Right there, if you don't mind. I looked at it for a long time, pretending to squint. Is this the water bill again? She froze. What? I looked up, still smiling. You said something about the water bill last time, didn't you? Her face changed for just a moment, tightened, then loosened again. Oh yes, that's right, the water bill. I signed the fake name I'd been practicing, just enough to make it look real, not enough to match my legal signature. When she walked away, I took a photo of the document with my phone and sent it straight to Eric. The next morning, Daniel stopped by. He looked tired, nervous, like a man standing in quicksand. Megan wasn't home, and for the first time in a long time it was just the two of us. He stood by the kitchen counter holding another set of papers. Dad, these need your signature, he said. His voice cracked a little. I glanced at him. What for? It's just, for estate maintenance. Taxes and banking permissions. I leaned back, folded my hands. You sure it's not the water bill again? He blinked. What? I smiled faintly. Megan said something about that yesterday. You two really need to keep better notes. He looked down, guilty. The kind of guilt you can see in someone's shoulders before it ever reaches their face. Dad, look, it's complicated, all right. Megan, she just wants to make sure everything's organized. I nodded slowly. Organized, that's a good word. I used to organize my tools the same way. Hammers with hammers, saws with saws, but if you leave them in the wrong hands long enough, someone always gets hurt. He didn't say anything, just stood there clutching the papers. Finally, I reached for the pen, my hand trembling not from fear but from practice. I asked again softly, this is for the water bill, right, son? He swallowed hard. Yeah, the water bill. I signed, slow and deliberate, pretending my hand couldn't stay steady. When I was done, I looked up. You remember when you were a kid, Daniel? You used to help me fix leaks in the basement. You always said, Dad, we'll never let this place fall apart. You remember that? He hesitated. Yeah, I remember. I nodded, keeping my eyes on him. Good, because lately it feels like you forgot. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He just nodded once, grabbed the papers, and left. When the door closed, I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. The recorder in my pocket was still running. Every lie, every hesitation, it was all there. That night, I went into my workshop and set up another camera. I hid it behind a jar of nails angled toward the door. The smell of sawdust filled the air. Funny thing about sawdust, it smells the same no matter how old you are. It smells like work, like something honest. I ran my hand along the workbench, the grooves worn deep over decades. You'd be proud of me, Mary. I whispered. I'm not fighting them with rage. I'm fighting them with proof. The next few days, the act got easier. I'd forget conversations, repeat questions, misplace my glasses. Daniel's voice softened every time he talked to me now. He was starting to crack. Megan, on the other hand, got bolder, calling banks, whispering behind doors. Every word was another nail in their own coffin. By the end of the week, Patricia had everything she needed. She called to say, "We've got them, Mr. Mason. One more push and it's over." I hung up the phone, staring out at the maple trees Mary and I had planted years ago. Their leaves were turning gold again. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel old. I felt steady. I whispered to myself, "You wanted an old fool, Megan. Well, you got one. Just not the kind you expected." The invitation said family lunch celebrating Dad's birthday. I almost laughed when I read it. Megan always did have a flair for pretending things were fine. The table was set like something out of a magazine. White linens, candles, matching plates. I sat at the far end where they told me to sit, with a smile plastered on my face that didn't belong to me. The smell of roast beef filled the air, and for a second it reminded me of Mary. She used to make the same meal, except it was real back then. Real laughter, real warmth, real family. Megan floated around the table like a hostess on TV, pouring wine, patting shoulders, smiling too wide. "Everyone, let's raise a glass for Harold," she said. 68 and still full of energy, well, most days, right? A few polite chuckles rippled through the room. I nodded, pretending not to hear the sting behind her words. She leaned closer to Daniel's aunt, lowering her voice just enough that everyone could still hear. "He forgets everything these days. We might need professional care soon just to keep him safe." The table went silent for half a second, then burst into awkward laughter. Someone clinked a glass to lighten the mood. I smiled, the kind of smile that hurts your teeth. My hands rested on the table, knuckles pale, but I didn't say a word. You'd be amazed what silence can do in a room full of cowards. While everyone kept talking about vacations, promotions, real estate, I kept my eyes fixed on the photo hanging above the mantel. Mary in her garden hat, laughing as she held a pot of tulips. The light from the window hit the glass just right, and for a moment it looked like she was looking back at me. I could almost hear her voice whispering, "Don't let them steal your peace, Harold." I didn't eat much. The food tasted like guilt. At one point, Megan reached over and patted my hand, her nails perfectly manicured. "Dad, you okay? You've been so quiet today." I looked at her and said softly, "I'm just trying not to forget anything important." She blinked, confused, but smiled anyway, that plastic grin she'd perfected. "Of course. That's good." When the laughter started again, I leaned back and let my eyes wander around the table. Faces I'd known my whole life, now avoiding mine. Nobody wanted to meet the eyes of the man being slowly erased from his own family. After dessert, when everyone drifted to the living room, I stayed behind. I needed a minute. Daniel came back into the dining room, holding his jacket, face pale. "Dad," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I looked up, tired. "Go on." He hesitated, his voice cracking. "Megan's got something on me. That's why I went along with it. I took money from the company just for a while to cover a debt. She found out, said she'd tell the board if I didn't help her." He wouldn't look at me. His fingers twisted around his wedding ring like it might save him. For a long moment, I didn't say anything, just stared at him, seeing both the man and the boy he used to be, the boy who once cried because he broke my hammer and thought I'd never forgive him. Finally, I said quietly, "Your mother would have cried." He looked up, startled. "Not because you stole," I continued, "but because you lied." The air between us felt heavy. He opened his mouth to speak, but there was nothing left to say. The truth already did all the talking. He sat down across from me, head in his hands. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I nodded. "No one ever does, son, but you keep walking, one small lie at a time, and before you know it, you're too far to see where you started." He started crying, quiet at first, then shaking. I didn't comfort him, not because I didn't care, but because I'd already spent a lifetime teaching him right from wrong. There's a point where words stop mattering. Through the window, I could see the maple trees Mary and I planted years ago. The leaves were turning gold again, the way she loved them. It hit me then how life keeps moving, even when you're standing still, even when everything you built starts crumbling. Daniel wiped his face, looking broken. "What do I do now?" I looked at him and said, "You tell the truth, all of it, start there." He nodded slowly. "And Megan," I took a deep breath, "she'll get what's coming. You just worry about finding the man your mother believed you could be." He didn't answer, just sat there quiet, staring at his own reflection in the wine glass. In the other room, I could still hear Megan laughing with the guests, her voice light and careless. She didn't know the game was already over. When the last person left, I went to the mantel, looked at Mary's photo again, and whispered, "They tried to humiliate me today, love. But you and I built this house on truth. And that's something they can't fake, no matter how hard they try." The house was silent again, but this time it didn't feel lonely. It felt like something was shifting, like the walls themselves were waiting for justice. The morning of the signing, the air felt heavier than usual, like the world was holding its breath. I put on my old gray jacket, the one with sawdust still caught in the seams, and drove to the notary's office. Megan sat beside me, humming softly, pretending it was just another errand. Daniel sat in the back seat, silent, looking out the window. He couldn't meet my eyes. The papers were neatly stacked on the table when we arrived. The notary smiled too wide, the kind of smile that means they already know what's about to happen. Megan pulled out her phone, snapped a picture of me, and said, "Big day, huh, Dad? You'll finally have less to worry about." I smiled back, calm. "That's right, sweetheart, less to worry about." My hands didn't shake, though they thought they would. I'd spent a lifetime steadying my grip, hammer, chisel, saw. Turns out it works for moments like this too. Patricia was already there, pretending to be just another client waiting for her appointment. Eric stood by the door, disguised as someone dropping off documents. None of them made a move, not yet. The notary slid the first page toward me. "Mr. Mason, this is the transfer of ownership document. Just sign here and the property will officially—" Megan interrupted, her tone sweet as syrup. "Belong to us." "Well, to the trust, of course, for Dad's benefit." I looked at her for a long moment. She had no idea the clock was ticking down. "You know, Megan," I said softly, "I remember building that house with my bare hands. Every nail, every board. I used to think nothing could take it away from me." She smiled. "Well, times change." I nodded. Yes, they do." I took the pen, my hand hovered over the signature line. "Remind me again, Daniel," I said, my voice quiet, almost fragile. "This is for the water bill, right?" Daniel froze, the color drained from his face. Megan shot him a sharp glance. "Just sign, Harold, it's routine." "Routine," I repeated, chuckling. "You're right, everything's routine these days." I scribbled something down, slow and deliberate, not my name, but the words "Justice waits." And then, like the perfect cue in a movie I never wanted to be in, the door swung open. "Police, don't move." The room exploded into motion. Officers poured in, calm but firm, followed by Patricia with her badge in hand. This entire transaction is being recorded as part of an ongoing investigation into property fraud. Megan stood up so fast her chair crashed to the floor. "What is this? You can't just barge in here." Patricia looked at her coolly. "Actually, we can." She nodded to one of the officers. "Check the notary's files." The notary tried to speak, but his voice cracked. I didn't know." "Yes, you did," Patricia cut in. "We've got the altered signatures, the fake certifications, and the recording of your meeting last week." Eric stepped forward, his voice steady. "And we have the original power of attorney, the one Megan forged. You should have checked who was copying who." Megan's face went pale. You set me up," she screamed at me. I didn't answer, I just looked at her, the woman who once called me Dad like it meant something. Daniel tried to speak, but his words tangled up. "Dad, I didn't, she made me." The officers cuffed him gently. One of them said, "You have the right to remain silent." Megan fought the whole way out, yelling about mistakes, lawyers, and conspiracies. Daniel didn't fight. He just looked at the floor. When the door closed and the noise faded, it was quiet again. I stood there, alone for a moment, looking down at the papers still on the table. My name was there, but not as a victim anymore. For once, it stood for something right. Patricia turned to me. "You did good, Harold. This won't bring back what they took from you, but it'll stop them from taking more." I nodded, staring at my hands. The skin was rough, the lines deep, years of work, years of building. "I just wanted to protect what's real," I said quietly. "The house, the memories, Mary." Patricia gave a small smile. "You did." She left, and I stayed for a while longer. The room was still, the faint hum of the ceiling fan filling the space. I picked up a small wooden pen holder on the notary's desk, something cheap, probably from a craft store. I turned it in my hands, feeling the smooth finish. Wood always tells the truth. You can polish it, stain it, cover it up, but you can't change the grain. That's what Mary used to say. I walked out into the sunlight, breathing deep. Across the parking lot, the police car doors shut. Megan's voice was muffled behind the glass, all her control, her arrogance, gone. Daniel sat beside her, staring straight ahead, tears cutting lines down his face. I didn't wave, didn't shout, didn't say a word. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, listening to the faint sound of wood creaking from the cuff of my jacket, the same sound it made when I built the front door of that house 40 years ago. Back then, it meant beginnings. Now it meant protection. Sometimes justice doesn't come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it comes quietly, steady as a hammer hitting home one last nail. And as I watched that car pull away, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just peace, because the house was still mine, and more importantly, so was my name. A few days after the hearing, the house felt too quiet again. The police had been gone, the papers signed. And justice, if that's what you call it, had done its work. But peace doesn't come with signatures. It comes in whispers in the spaces between memories. Patricia stopped by that afternoon. She stood on the porch with the same calm grace she'd carried through the whole mess, holding a single envelope in her hand. "This was sealed in your wife's estate file," she said. "She asked that it be given to you only if things ever went this far." Her words hung in the air. I took the envelope. My name was written in Mary's handwriting, soft, looping letters that I hadn't seen in years. My hands shook before I even opened it. The first line hit me before I finished the second. "If they ever hurt you, don't destroy them. Teach them what we built this home for." I sat down right there on the porch steps, the wood creaking under my weight. The smell of the old cedar rail brought me back to those days when Mary used to sit beside me barefoot, drinking tea from that chipped blue cup. She always said forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was strength that learned how to breathe again. I read her words over and over until the ink blurred. "Love doesn't die when people disappoint you, Harold. It only hides behind the noise until you choose to hear it again." And that was it. No long goodbye, no sermon, just the kind of simple truth she was always good at saying. Later that week, Patricia called me back to her office to finalize the property transfers. When I got there, she wasn't alone. Sitting on the couch was a little girl, maybe 7, clutching a small backpack to her chest. She had Daniel's eyes, big, soft, and scared. Patricia said gently, "This is Emma. Her mother passed last year. Daniel listed you as her guardian in his statement." The world stopped spinning for a moment. Emma looked up at me unsure and whispered, "Are you my grandpa?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded and knelt down so we were eye to eye. Her tiny hands were trembling. I said, "Yeah, sweetheart, I am." She smiled shyly. "Mom said you build things." I laughed, it caught in my throat, but it was real. "I do. I build things, mostly houses, sometimes bird feeders." She tilted her head. "Can you teach me?" That's when it hit me what Mary meant. The house wasn't about walls or money or titles. It was about what we build inside people, what we pass on when we're gone. I reached into my pocket and handed her the same small wooden bird carving I'd made years ago. "You see this?" I said. "Your grandma helped me carve it. She said it'd remind us that no matter how high something flies, it always needs a place to come home to." Emma traced the grain of the wood with her finger, nodding softly. "It's pretty." I smiled. "So are you." We left the office together, hand in hand. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel old. I just felt needed. A few weeks later, I stood in front of the community center downtown, the one Mary used to volunteer at. The paint was peeling, the sign crooked, but it still stood. I decided to donate part of what was left, not as a gesture of pity, but as a promise. Inside, a new plaque hung by the entrance. "The Mary Mason Foundation for those who build, forgive, and begin again." It wasn't fancy, just carved wood and honest words. That's how Mary would have wanted it. Emma ran through the hall, giggling as her sneakers squeaked on the old floorboards. Watching her play, I felt something loosen inside me, like the ache that had lived in my chest since the day Mary died was finally starting to exhale. Later, when we got home, Emma sat at the kitchen table drawing. She looked up and asked, "Grandpa, are you sad?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "Not sad, just remembering." She smiled and went back to her drawing. When she was done, she showed it to me, 2 people standing by a big house with a tree beside it. "That's you and Grandma," she said proudly. "And that's me. You're teaching me to build." My eyes burned and I had to look away for a second. I put her picture on the fridge right next to the old photo of Mary holding a hammer, grinning like a kid. That night, after I tucked Emma into bed, I sat on the porch again. The maple trees whispered in the wind just like they always did. I pulled out Mary's letter one more time and whispered, "You were right, love. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about finding your way back home." Somewhere deep in the house, the wood creaked softly, not a warning this time, but a sigh, like the house itself finally felt at peace. I closed my eyes and smiled. Mary built this home with love. I was just lucky enough to learn how to keep it standing. The courtroom was cold, in that sterile kind of way that drains the color out of everything. The walls were pale, The air smelled like coffee and old paper, and every sound, the shuffle of shoes, the creak of chairs, felt louder than it should have been. Megan sat at the defense table, her hands cuffed in front of her, eyes fixed on the floor. Daniel sat beside her, not cuffed but looking just as trapped. I sat across the aisle, still, quiet. I didn't come to see them punished. I came to see if there was anything left to save. When the judge called my name, I stood. My knees ached, but my voice didn't shake. "Mr. Mason," the judge said, "you've requested to speak before sentencing. You may proceed." I nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor." I looked at the room, the press, the lawyers, the curious faces waiting for blood, then at my son. His eyes were red, tired, broken. "I've had a long time to think," I began. "And I realized something. We don't build homes with nails. We build them with trust. And when trust rots, the whole thing collapses, no matter how solid the walls look." You could have heard a pin drop. I built that house with my hands, every beam, every board. But the truth is, I wasn't just building a house, I was building a place where love could live. And somewhere along the line, we all forgot that. Megan wiped her eyes. Daniel couldn't even look at me. "I don't want them punished," I said. "I want them changed. I want them to remember what home really means." The prosecutor shifted in her seat. The judge leaned forward slightly, like he wasn't used to hearing that kind of thing in his courtroom. I looked at Megan then. She was trembling. "You hurt me," I said quietly, "but more than that, you hurt yourself. You traded warmth for greed. You forgot that kindness is the strongest currency there is." She started sobbing, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry, Harold," she whispered. "I don't want to be that person anymore. I'll do whatever it takes, community service, restitution, anything. I just want to make it right." Then Daniel stood up suddenly, voice breaking. "Dad," said, "I need to say something." The judge gave a small nod. Daniel turned to face me, his words barely holding together. "When Mom got sick, I wasn't there for her. You were. I told myself I was too busy, but the truth is I was just scared. She called me one night crying and I ignored it. The next morning she was gone." He wiped his eyes with shaking hands. "You always said she died of heart failure. But it wasn't just her heart, Dad. It was us. Stress, the distance. I killed her just as much as any disease did. And now I've lost everything trying to fill that hole." The room was silent except for his sobs. I felt the air thicken around me, heavy with all the things we never said. My throat burned, but I kept my voice steady. "Son," I said, "you didn't kill your mother. You just forgot how much she loved you. And that's something you can still remember if you try." He nodded, his face buried in his hands. Megan reached over, hesitated, then gently placed a hand on his shoulder. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Mason," he said, "what would you have this court do?" I looked at them, my son, my daughter-in-law, two people who turned my world upside down, and I thought of Mary's letter, the one she'd written years ago. "Don't destroy them, teach them. Give them both a chance to rebuild," I said. "Not in comfort, but in service. Let them work, help fix what's broken in others. That's how you learn what you broke in yourself." The judge nodded slowly. "Community service and rehabilitation, then." He tapped his pen. A rare request in this courtroom, but perhaps the right one. He pronounced the sentence: 2 years supervised rehabilitation for Megan, counseling and restitution for Daniel. No prison bars, but no easy road either. As the gavel struck, Daniel looked at me one last time. He didn't try to speak. He didn't have to. Our eyes said everything: regret, love, grief, forgiveness, all tangled up in one quiet look. As they were led away, I turned toward the window. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds and spilled across the courthouse steps. Funny thing about light, it always finds the cracks. I walked out slowly, the sound of the wooden floor echoing under my boots. The world outside felt bigger somehow, cleaner. Maybe justice wasn't about punishment after all. Maybe it was about remembering who you are, even after you've forgotten. Before I left, I whispered to the empty air, "You see that, Mary? They're learning, we all are." And for the first time in years, I felt like the house we built, that love we left behind, might just stand tall again. The old workshop smelled like sawdust again. It had been years since I'd walked in and heard the soft hum of the tools, the whisper of wood being shaped by patient hands. The dust floated in the sunlight, just like it used to when Mary would stand by the window, watching me work. Except now, the laughter came from somewhere else, younger voices, brighter ones. The place wasn't mine anymore, not really. It belonged to everyone who walked through its doors. We turned it into something new, the Mason Workshop of Hope. A place where young folks learned the trades I grew up on: carpentry, repair, craft, restoration. But it wasn't just about wood or nails. It was about purpose, giving them something to build when life had torn too much down. And on the other side of the yard, we'd added a small community room. A warm space for seniors, folks who'd been forgotten, tricked, or pushed aside by the very people they raised. They came here for lunch, for stories, for company. Sometimes they just came to sit near the sound of the hammers, like it reminded them that life was still moving. I remember one morning standing at the entrance, watching a young man plane a piece of oak. His hands were awkward, the blade catching at first. He looked up at me, worried. "Don't force it," I said. "Let the wood tell you where it wants to go." He frowned, trying again, slower this time. The curls peeled smooth and steady, falling like ribbons to the floor. "There you go," I smiled. "That's it. You listen long enough and everything starts to make sense." He laughed. "Guess that works for people too, huh?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Especially people." Every corner of that shop carried a memory: the old workbench, still dented from the years, the smell of pine and varnish, the faded photograph of Mary in her apron, holding a chisel like it was a paintbrush. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking to her out loud, just like before. "See, love," I'd say, brushing the dust off a half-finished chair. "We're still building." Emma came running in then. She was 14 now, tall, bright-eyed, and full of that spark only kids have when they still believe in the good of things. "Grandpa Harold," she called. "Guess what? The scholarship fund got another donation." She held up a check. Megan's name was signed at the bottom. For a second I just stood there reading it, feeling a strange ache in my chest. It wasn't guilt, not anger either, just something softer. Emma grinned. "You think we can help more families now?" I nodded. "We will, sweetheart. Every cent goes to the Mary Mason Fund, just like I promised." That fund had grown faster than I ever expected. Megan had sent every dollar of restitution back, more than once. She'd been volunteering too, teaching financial literacy at the center downtown, working with single mothers who'd been conned by their own kin. Daniel helped her sometimes. They'd found their own road back, rough and uneven but real. I didn't write them letters, but they knew where to find me. And sometimes when the mail came, there'd be a photo inside, Daniel with Emma, smiling, rebuilding. That was enough. One afternoon, after everyone had left, I stayed behind to clean the benches. The light came through the big windows, soft and golden, landing right on Mary's old tool chest. I ran my hand over it, tracing the scratches where her initials used to be. She always said, "Love isn't just about keeping things safe, it's about passing them on." So that's what I did. I looked around at the shelves lined with projects, birdhouses, stools, carved toys. Each one had a story, a pair of hands, a bit of healing behind it. I could almost hear her laughter blending with the sounds of hammers and sandpaper, with Emma's voice echoing from outside. There was peace here now, not the quiet kind that comes from loneliness, but the steady, working kind. The kind you earn. I wiped the last bit of dust off the table and stood back, breathing it all in. "The best justice," I said softly, "isn't revenge. It's rebuilding what they tried to break." The sunlight stretched across the floor, warm and forgiving. I hung my apron by the door just like I used to and smiled. Mary would have loved this place, not because it was perfect, but because it was alive. Because broken things, when cared for, have a way of becoming beautiful again. I walked outside. The maple trees we planted decades ago were full grown now, shading the path with gold. Kids were laughing somewhere in the yard. Emma waved, holding a wooden sign she'd been painting. "Grandpa, look, it says welcome home." I laughed, shaking my head. "That's perfect, kiddo. That's exactly what this place is." And as I watched her run back inside, brush in hand, I thought about all the houses I'd ever built and realized this one, the one made of second chances, forgiveness, and love, was the strongest of them all. So if you're listening to this, let me ask you something. If it were your house, your memories, your legacy, would you forgive or would you fight back? Tell me in the comments. Your story deserves to be heard.